In the chaos following the collapse of Sicilian authority in 1943, an old man from Villalba, named Don Calò Vizzini, silently stepped into the void. He wore no uniform and held no official office, but soon he was already in charge of his village. This was not a story about a gangster in the Hollywood sense. It was something far more dangerous and nuanced. Long before the war, Sicily faced a problem. The state existed, but only in some areas. In rural villages, justice was slow or non-existent, and contracts carried little weight without enforcement. Land disputes often resulted in bloodshed, leaving a vacuum that men like Don Calò filled with mediation rather than chaos. If you wanted land, Don Calò knew who could give it. If you had trouble, he could settle it. He could arrange protection not through violence first, but through permission, an invisible power that held communities together. A post-war Sicilian journalist would later observe, "For many peasants, the Mafia was not an enemy of the state. It was the state they could reach. As permission became habit, power became invisible, and control hid behind subtle networks rather than overt violence. When Mussolini's fascist regime tried to crush the Mafia, many believed men like Don Calò were finished. But they weren't. They waited out the crackdown, and their networks hibernated, ready to spring back into action. Arrests and crackdowns disrupted their operations temporarily, but the disputes and influence persisted underground. Networks never truly died, they merely went to sleep until the collapse of fascism under Allied bombs awakened them. In 1943, when the Allies invaded Sicily, they faced a new challenge, establishing order amid chaos. The enemy was gone, the fascists discredited, but stability had yet to return to the villages. The Allies decided to improvise, selecting men who knew the local terrain, could control crowds, and hated fascists. In Villalba, there was only one obvious choice, Don Calò Vizzini, the man who had already been guiding his community quietly. He was appointed mayor under the Allied military government, a former hunted man now representing authority. Years later, an Allied officer would casually remark, "We didn't choose saints. We chose men who could make the countryside quiet." And so the legend grew. People claimed the Mafia had helped the invasion, but the truth was colder. When power collapses, whoever remains standing becomes useful, regardless of past affiliations. Post-war Sicily was starving, food and fuel were scarce, and bureaucracy was impossible to navigate. Don Calò thrived in this chaos, able to move wheat, goods, and cut through red tape with ease. The real power was not just in the food he could procure, but in the permits he controlled, who could transport, who could open shops. Scarcity flowing through him, first as hunger, then as leverage, made him seem like the embodiment of order. To many villagers, he was not a criminal, but a stabilizer, a force that kept chaos at bay in uncertain times. And this was how power often hides itself,